Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Wishcrafting, the podcast where we uncover the magic of the world around us. I'm Wishamaya, and today we are diving into the bright and cheerful world of the daffodil, one of spring's most iconic blooms and one of the oldest cultivated ornamental bulbs. Beyond its golden petals lies a world of folklore, spirituality, death omens, and medical intrigue. So, settle in and let's journey into the enchanted realm of the daffodil. The daffodil, botanically known as the narcissus, is a flower. It's deeply woven into mythology and folklore, as its very name comes from Greek mythology, the tragic tale of Narcissus, the beautiful youth who fell in love with his own reflection. According to legend, after his death, the gods transformed him into the golden daffodil, cementing the daffodil as a warning to those who give in to vanity. But did you know that in some cultures, the daffodil isn't just a tale of vanity? In China, the daffodil is associated with good fortune and prosperity, blooming just in time for the Lunar New Year. In Welsh folklore, spotting the first daffodil of the season is said to bring wealth for the year ahead. However, in Victorian England, during the height of society's obsession with the language of flowers, gifting a single daffodil was considered bad luck and an omen of incoming misfortune. Now, let's step into the metaphysical realm for a second. The daffodil is often associated with the solar plexus chakra, the center of personal power and of confidence. Its bright yellow color symbolizes joy, clarity, and spiritual awakening. Many believe that placing daffodils in the home invites positive energy and clears away stagnant emotions. In flower magic, daffodils are used for spells of renewal, creativity, and even prophetic dreams. Some say that meditating with a daffodil nearby can enhance intuition and bring visions of the future, and I can attest to this personally. Daffodils were brought over to the United States by the colonialist settlers and planted just about everywhere, especially on the East Coast where I live. So they're not very hard to find. Because of the sheer numbers planted by European colonists, they are now considered naturalized in the United States, which is the gentle term that we use to basically say they are here forever. They're here to stay. Daffodils love to grow in disturbed soils, roadsides, and lawn edges, but they also love the cool slopes of the Appalachian forests, which is where I have experience with them the most, and it's also my personal favorite place to find them. They're naturalized, so they're everywhere, but they aren't considered invasive, which is impressive because they come up so early and they grow so fast, often blooming when everything else is just beginning to wake up. For this reason, they're pretty unique for a non-native ornamental plant that is so prolific. So this is one of those non-native plants that I embrace without caution. I just love it to death. This is relevant because the house that I currently reside in is on a hill, and that hill crests a local forested floodplain. So the daffodils that are here were planted a very long time ago, and they have colonized the forest in droves. The little plateau that I have right outside of my back porch has thousands of them just beginning to bloom right now. And I'm always so happy to see the daffodils in February because they always seem to appear just as the cold, gray days of deep winter begin to weigh on me pretty heavily. So this year, I went out and I spent many afternoons, especially the warm afternoons we had, laying amongst the daffodils in my backyard. Initially, it was as a thanks and just to show them how much I appreciate them. And then it turned into something else. Eventually, I began to become aware of them asking me to let them in a little bit deeper into my journey work. They asked to aid in my trance work, and so I let them, and it has been incredible. They have helped me anchor into the earth and added an extra support that I never knew that I needed. They're bulbous plants. They spread by splitting their bulbs underground. It all happens underground, so it makes sense that they would be so helpful in rooting me further into the earth and into myself. I've never really had much issue staying grounded in any of my visionary journeys, but this particular winter was pretty tough. I didn't realize how far away from familiarity with my own energy I had become until I started this work with the daffodils. And I just want to quickly summarize everything that I've been saying just now to put clearly to you my point. I do a lot of trance work, visionary journeying, meditation, divination, etc. And when you do any spiritual work or magic, it is important, very, very important, to regularly check in and upkeep your connection and awareness to what your own energy feels like. However, it is especially important to foster that connection when you are doing any kind of transcendental work, trance work, astral projection, journeying, guided meditations, anything like that. When you are changing your state of awareness, it is very important that you have systems in place to make sure you're safe. As we all know, this winter has been very hard for many reasons, and I had been very lax on my energetic upkeep, and it happens. That's okay. But I felt the call to go and lay amongst the daffodils, and I found that when I did, going into a light trance, they spent the first few sessions of us hanging out together helping me clear energetic pathways and rejuvenate my bone-tired soul. Eventually, once we'd spent time in each other's company, the daffodils asked me to allow them to help me a little bit further in my next journey, where I was essentially planning to go to my inner temple and refortify my wards and shields. That might sound like simple work, but it can actually be quite a lot, especially when I'm feeling more run down like I was. So I did this. I went and I began journeying with the intention of redoing my wards or rejuvenating my wards. And as I go through my standard anchoring method, I started to feel the tendrils of the thousands of daffodils come and do what felt like the equivalent of yanking me down from an upright position. I mean, it was almost soul jolting that I was nearly knocked out of my altered state. But then they wrapped themselves around me where they needed to, and I was able to go and do the tedious work of renewing my protections. Until then, I hadn't realized how bad I had left them to disrepair, and I would not have been able to do that work that I needed to do had I not had the assistance from the daffodils. I would have had to wait, or at least do it in pieces, which tends to not be very helpful for this kind of thing. So, the daffodils, they knew, they sensed it long before I did, which I am so grateful for. Even in the story of Narcissus that I talked about earlier, he sees his reflection, and he physically cannot move from that spot once he does. He's so transfixed that he doesn't eat or drink, and he withers away in the same spot until he is finally transformed into a flower after death. So, daffodils are powerful grounding allies, and they have a subtle, or maybe not so subtle, tie to transformation as well. Daffodils also hold strong associations with death and the afterlife. Past the tale of Narcissus, in some European traditions, daffodils are seen as flowers of mourning, flowers of remembrance, often placed on graves to honor the departed. In medieval times, it was believed that seeing a drooping daffodil was an omen of impending death. Additionally, in some Celtic lore, daffodils were said to bloom in places where fairies guided lost souls to the otherworld, a folkloric association that directly ties into my own personal experience where they ushered me between this waking reality and my world I go to when I am in trance, the world just beyond that waking reality. They're delightful little things, if you ask me. However, the daffodil's magic is not just metaphysical or spiritual. It has long been used for medicinal purposes as well. Ancient herbalists believed that daffodils had healing properties, particularly for pain relief. However, caution here, because while the daffodil has been used in traditional medicines, we now know that its bulbs contain toxic alkaloids that can be very dangerous if ingested, so don't try that at home. But it is interesting that modern research has discovered that compounds in the daffodil may have potential in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. So that's just another example of how ancient wisdom and modern science can often intertwine. So from mythology to metaphysics, from fortune to mourning, the daffodil is so much more than just a flower. It's a symbol of transformation, of resilience, and of mystery. So, the next time you see a daffodil swaying in the breeze, take a moment to appreciate the centuries of lore wrapped within its golden bloom. That's all for today's episode. If you enjoyed this journey, please be sure to follow, subscribe, leave a review or a comment if you can, and if there's a plant you'd love to learn more about, let me know, because I want to talk about it. So, until next time, keep your roots deep and your dreams wild.